Okay, so today's conversation is focused on the Afrobarometer report, which is revealing some rather disturbing trends when it comes to the trust that we have for certain institutions. Now, particularly the courts, the Electoral Commission, and the police. Okay, so we can look at a reference year of, say, 2005, where the Electoral Commission had about 75% trust, according to the Afrobarometer report. Well, in 2022, it has dropped from 75% to 33%. I mean, then you have the courts. Now, in 2005, trust in the court system was at about 62%. It's down to 36%. But the biggest drop is for the police, who in 2005 scored 64% when it came to the level of trust that Ghanaians have in them. But in 2022 have plummeted to 28%. First of all, how did we get here? What are the factors that are causing the erosion of trust in these critical institutions? What does this mean in a year like this, in an election year? And what should these institutions be doing to regain the trust in a way that will ensure that that overarching asset of peace that this nation has enjoyed for the entirety of its history will be maintained? This is what we want to talk about with our guests. Lawyer Kwaku Ansa-Asare is a former director of the Ghana School of Law. He joins us over the phone alongside Franklin Cudjoe, founder and president of Imani Center for Policy and Education. Gentlemen, good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Very well indeed, and so glad that you could join us. Now, Lawyer Ansa-Asare has an appointment in court this morning. So, if it's all right with you, Franklin, we're going to start with Lawyer Ansa-Asare, just so that we can let him set off for court as quickly as possible. So, let's start from the beginning. First of all, are you surprised at this outcome of the Afrobarometer for 2022?
No, I'm not surprised at all, given the assessment of the objective conditions on the ground. But I'd like to situate the discussion in context. Let me begin with the courts. If you take the statistics, 1999, 58%, 2005, 52%, 2022, 36%. Now, who was in power in 1999? J.J. Rawlings.
Yeah.
2005, Kufuor, at the period. I'm not, specifically mentioning 2005, 30, but the period. And then 2022, maybe after Kufuor, down to 2022, will be John Mahama, Mills, Nana Akufo-Addo. But the fact is, my brother, how will the populace have confidence in the judicial system when, for instance, the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court, is all too predictable in the outcome of its judicial proceedings or deliberations? All too predictable. People already know who will win and who will lose. The litigant, the litigating public will not have confidence. How will the litigating public and the general citizenry have confidence in a system whose head is perceived to be violating or permitting the violation of the constitutional processes of nominating the other justices to the Supreme Court? When the Attorney General is caught on tape telling an accused person he himself has cause to be arraigned, telling that person to go and procure a medical report to excuse his absence from court in a judicial proceeding, the highest minister of justice in the land. How will the populace have confidence? Or when they hear the attorney general telling an accused person that you help me because the president, I'm under pressure to secure the conviction of the other accused person or persons. How will the litigants, have confidence in such a system?
Lawyer Ansa-Asare, it's probably worth mentioning. It's probably worth mentioning that. Lawyer, it's worth mentioning that the examples you're giving happened in 2024. This is a 2022 report. Do you still think that they are related?
You see, and then I'll give you one practical example. There is a chief technical case and the Kwapim with regard to who is the proper person, to mount the Kwapim tool. The matter has gone up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has made a pronouncement on an application brought by one of the persons who was convicted by the lower court. First of all, after the conviction, the judge was transferred from Koforidua to Soutuum. Do you understand Soutuum? It's a mockery of justice. Then this person who has been convicted now attends court accompanied by police personnel of the police service or sometimes soldiers. When the head of state goes to Ekopon after the Supreme Court deliberations to tell the people of Ekopon that whether you like it or not, this is the person I've anointed to be the Omahine or Ukwapehine. Tell me how the people of Ekopon will continue to have confidence in the system or remain loyal to the constitutional processes. They will not. And the examples are legion. I can go on and on and on. But in order for the people to have confidence, we must have a very strong judiciary capable of not being interfered with. They must make sure that the independence guaranteed them by the Constitution prevails. Unless they are able to do that, the general populace will not have confidence in them. I can give you many more examples, but as far as I'm concerned, the perception out there is a loss of confidence in the system. The people, the confidence we already had in the past or previously, we erode. And this accounts for the continuing erosion of the people's confidence in the judicial system.
So, to your mind, what is the cure?
The cure is insulation of the judiciary from political interference. The judiciary must be insulated. And the personnel of the judiciary and the judicial service must remain loyal to the Constitution. When Akukosa was sacked by Nkrumah for being disloyal to him, he reminded him, Mr. President, my loyalty is to the Constitution, not to the President of the Republic. He was replaced by Sarkodie. Nkrumah wanted Sarkodie to do his bidding. Mr. President, I'm sorry. My loyalty is to the Constitution. Unless we have many more of such bold spirits in our system, the cure, the prescription will be worse than disease. So it is up to the personnel, it is up to the Chief Justice to remain loyal. If it is not within the prerogative of the Chief Justice to request nomination for elevation to the Supreme Court, she should not do that. The Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary. The plain language of Article 125, Clause 4, the head of the judiciary. And in the celebrated case of Kunyenya and others, that is the Chief Justice Archer and others, and they made it quite clear in his opinion that the Chief Justice head of the judiciary cannot play second fiddle to the president because he's head of a separate branch of government. Now, where is the current practice? We have sitting justices seen or caught dancing with the executive arm of government. The people's confidence will be eroded. I have seen pictures where at entertainment or receptions, you find justices of the superior court arm in arm with the president dancing. My brother, this person, the people say, hey, so if I go to court against government, what happens? You've lost. Even before, one might have filed a protest. We should stop doing that. Again, the cure, the most effective cure will lie in implementation of Article 127, Clause 7, that the judiciary must be guaranteed of its financial administrative freedom. In the administration of financial estimates, it must be to the Constitution. The Chief Justice must submit the estimates of the judiciary to to Parliament. It shouldn't go through any young officer's desk at the presidency or the Minister of Finance, to reduce it. When they do that, I mean, it is executive that is calling the shot. So it contravenes the black and white rating or in the Constitution that the independence of the judiciary includes independence of their financial, administrative duties.
Right. Okay.
Unless that is done. So day in, day out, we must ensure that the judiciary is resourced from the consolidated fund, not from the Ministry of Finance. It should go to Parliament. Let Parliament not tinker with it. So once the Chief Justice or the head of the judiciary submits the estimate, no one, neither the President nor Parliament, must tinker with it. And that presupposes that the head of the judiciary will do the right thing. Don't inflate it. Don't add up. Make sure that what he's submitting is in tune with what the nation requires. But if you begin to tinker with it, and then in sending the estimate, you say false figures, again, the confidence in the system will be eroded. There's nothing that can be done that will ease the situation. The only thing that I pray for is to see that in my lifetime, our judiciary will be independent in the right sense of the word. Let Article 127, Clause 7 work. Let the constitutional processes work. If it is the prerogative of the president to appoint the other justices of the Supreme Court as slated in Article 144, Clause 2 of the 1992 Constitution, let it work. I am disappointed to read in the Daily Guide this morning that the Attorney General and the Ghana Bar Association have thrown their weight behind the illegality and unconstitutionality of the request that the Chief Justice is alleged to have made to the president. It's unconstitutional.
Right.
I mean, it should not even be debated. It flies in the face. So it is against the judicial conscience, of the judiciary itself, that the head of the institution which over the years has gained the status of the bastion of the people's civil liberty, will find itself in this confusion. Very sad.
Now, yeah, lawyer, let me ask you this before you take leave of us. The judiciary is made up predominantly of lawyers and judges, and almost every judge starts off as a lawyer. Is there some measure of cure to be found in our training of lawyers? Is there something to be done there that can eventually result in an increased level of trust in the judiciary system?
Nothing done, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing can be done. You see, we are involved. We are all involved. We bribe the personnel of the judiciary and the judicial service. We give goodies, freebies to them. We approach the corridors of power to intervene. So it is not only the personnel or the justices. All of us are involved. The training of intending lawyers cannot provide any cure, because all of us attended either St. Augustine's or Adisababa and Franklin or Benkum Secondary School. The same cook, the same Makasa, the same culture, and therefore from day one, when we are born, these things are break into act. It is for us to mend our ways, unless individually and collectively we see things and talk about things, that are wrongdoing. There's no law teacher can mend the character of a trainee lawyer. None at all.
Okay.
So,
I want to say a big thank you to you. Lawyer Kwaku Ansa-Asare is the former director of the Ghana School of Law. He's got to leave us now because he's got an appointment in court. But we still have Franklin Cudjoe, founder and president of Imani Center for Policy and Education, on the line. And he's been joined by Professor Kwesi Aning, security consultant, no stranger to our show. Prof, good morning to you.
Yes, good morning.
Okay, now, if you don't mind, we'll start with you, Frank. Well, we'll come to you, Franklin. And this is what I'm wondering. When you look at the trend, in 2005, the EC, the courts, and the police all had perhaps their highest scores, 75%, 62%, 64%. This, as Lawyer Ansa-Asare points out, happened under the regime of President Kufuor, former President Kufuor. Then the numbers started to fall until 2017, when President Akufo-Addo assumed office, when suddenly all of them enjoyed a bump. The EC rose from 37% previous year, 2014, to 54% in 2017. The courts rose from 42% in 2014 to 57% in 2017. The police rose from 35% in 2014 to 40% in 2017. So at the very beginning of President Akufo-Addo's tenure, every institution on this list got a bump. But by 2022, we see them down in the doldrums at their lowest ever scores. All of them. 33% for the EC, 36% for the courts, and 28% for the police. Franklin, what's this trend telling us?
Well, good morning to your good self and to Professor Aning. Well, isn't it actually reflective of the levels of governance as well? I mean, you note that from 2017, there was a lot of hope in the government, and essentially everything the president did was hailed. As we move further, as you realize, up until 2022, all these numbers that are actually reflective, if you look at them, if you look at the Corruption Perception Index, and indeed overall governance effectiveness index of almost all the indices that governments are actually assessed on, the economy, governance, the rule of law, all these indices are equally are showing, in the reverse order. So it's just reflective of what the type of governance we've experienced. But even though these figures are dated as well, because as you realize, they only ended on 2022. I'll be surprised. I'll be interested in knowing what the figures really would look like in 2024, and I'll not be surprised if they are further down. If they're further reduced. Look, the EC especially. Let me not even bring our issues into the fore. Look at the way the EC relates to its own stakeholders, right? Every now and then there are challenges to its own decisions that it makes, sometimes without proper thinking. They issue directives and say, oh, we only have district elections in certain particular areas, offices. Then they somehow, keep postponing or withdrawing and then issuing directives that really just don't make sense. So I think largely the EC has brought this upon itself, the way it relates to its stakeholders, the way it even staffs some of its critical institutions. Isn't it the case that the IT department has been, people have been quibbling over the fact that the EC, as we speak now, is made up of, at least at the leadership level, is made up of people who are just clients of the current government. And so there's deep suspicion, not just by the political parties, but ordinary people as well. So let's not be surprised by this revelation at all. So for me, I'm not entirely surprised.
Okay.
As of the court, I think what's it called? Mr. Asare has spoken enough on that. I think Professor Aning will speak better on the police.
Yeah.
But clearly speaking, I'm not entirely surprised. As I said, it's reflective of almost all the other indices that you can think of. It is if you talk about the country's policy institutional framework, it's all showing negative. The economic indices, whether be the World Economic Forum's CEI, or the Doing Business Index, or the Heritage Foundations, or the Economic Freedom of the World Report of the Fraser Institute, all these indices are showing that things have not gone well at all. So you can't quarrel with this data at all.
Now, I don't know if you find it significant, since we're talking about the EC, that in reality, this is a time when the EC has been far more accessible than ever
After
before.
this white building, there's a tent to do.
I'm sorry? Sorry, I think that was profaning there. But Franklin, I'm asking about the EC. That, there's never been a time when the EC has been more accessible, more media friendly. Cerebral Kwaku is available on all networks, talking about all kinds of things, explaining all sorts of things. EC chair herself often engages the media. Other commissioners are very often heard, answering questions and so forth. Is it a surprise that at a time when they are engaging the most, they are trusted the least?
It depends on what you are communicating, really. It's like, what did they say? More haste, less speed. If you are communicating virtually nonsense, it doesn't necessarily mean that people are listening and listening right. So people could be saying all sorts of things. Look at the way the EC herself, the chairman herself, carries herself. How many people guard her? Before she gets to a particular place, there are soldiers, there are policemen. What is this? So the image you send across, the fact that you don't even want to sit in the witness box, in order to answer questions concerning an election. These things tell people that, yes, you may be communicating, you are present, you are there, but you're actually not communicating anything sensible. So for me, I'm not entirely surprised about these figures once more. So it's not about the accessibility, it's exactly what you're communicating, right? You get inspired when Cerebral speaks. I think he's doing well, but look, I've never considered administratively and in terms of just operational sensitivity, operational management, they've failed, almost failed. Look at all these elections we've had in between the major elections. There's always a problem. They promise that, we'll send ballot papers before the time. What happens? Before you realize, we didn't know, we were not ready, or we are sorry. Sometimes they don't even say sorry. The ballot papers got there late, and just that, and then they just leave it like that. So they are present. You can see boxes going around, flying around, but are they getting there on time? You can see Mr. Silva speaking. Is he speaking authoritatively and communicating properly? That's the issue.
Yeah. Now, Prof, I mean, this is a very sensitive year. To get such poor results, especially for these three key institutions, is problematic. But the police, I wonder if you're as surprised as I am. Because the police, I mean, historically, their scores have never been that high. But was there not a certain perception, at least in 2022, under the new IGP, that the police's image was being cleaned up? How do we explain their lowest score yet? Do we have Prof. Aning?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Yes. Sorry, that question was for you. Shall I repeat it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I was wondering whether you were surprised at the score of the police, bearing in mind that in even though they've historically scored quite low in the Afrobarometer report, in 2022 under the current IGP, the general anecdotal view was that the police was cleaning up its image. Does it surprise you that in 2022, according to the Afrobarometer report, they have scored their lowest yet?
No, it's not surprising because Dr. Dampare had taken over just about 9-10 months prior to the study being completed. So whatever reforms he had started had not kicked in. Nevertheless, I think it's important for this result to be seen as part of the historical burden of the service. So I'm quite sure that were a survey to be done 2024 before the elections, we might see slightly improved ratings. But Dr. Dampare has been fighting an uphill battle throughout. Let's not forget that the challenges within the police service go several years. Political manipulation, an institutional culture of graft and intimidation, bribery, from junior to the very highest leaders. And I can tell you, if you ask road traffic users and the levels of extortion still on the roads, I routinely report, such cases, video them, and then, send them up the chain. But I think this should be taken purely as a wake-up call to Dr. Dampare and the institution as a whole to continue to strive to improve their services.
So, in a year like this, seeing these results across these three critical institutions, the lowest yet for all three of them, how in terms of as a security analyst, how does this strike you? Are we perhaps in a precarious position leading into an election with such scores?
Yes, and let me explain. The police service is supposed to be the frontline institution for the Election Security Task Force. That will draw up the hotspots, identification of groups, individuals who may create trouble because they have a history, arms flows. So you would notice that in the next month or two until end of November, the police will be seizing a lot of weapons stuck in commercial vehicles and all that. So they have a critical role to play. But if we see the last 3-4 by-elections that the Ghana Police Service has played a role, I think that role was commendable. And I think in a couple of cases, their fairness has annoyed quite a number of the political parties. So it's still work in progress, but once more, this is a wake-up call. When we come to the Electoral Commission, that is a key one, because every single war on this continent has started as a result of electoral disputes. And therefore, electoral commissions have that onerous task of behaving and performing in a way that creates credibility, transparency, respect around their actions and utterances. And I think the Electoral Commission has one hell of an uphill battle ahead of it to win public trust and public respect, because there are quite a number of occasions where the behavior of some of their staff, their own utterances, the reversals of what they have put out then into the public domain certainly does not create trust. The judiciary is in a very unique position. Judiciaries have this particular claim to fame for ameliorating and reducing tensions, and in situations where citizens or groups don't have anywhere to turn to, the judiciary is the institution that pronounces on tensions and, resolves some of these difficulties. Now, when judiciaries lose that capacity to be seen as a neutral, effective, objective institution that can deal with the tensions, and they can be high-flying ones, emotional ones, particularly during elections where the allure of having access to public funds is great, that becomes dangerous. So combining these three institutions with their low scores, plus the 5 months or less than 5 months duration for the campaign of abuse, intimidation, threats, misogynistic statements, then puts us in quite a tight spot. It doesn't look pretty from where I am sitting at all.
Wow. Now, Franklin,
yes,
if indeed, and I am completely inclined to see the big picture, just as Prof. Kwesi Aning does. If you are to, then at this point, 5 months to an election, what can be done?
A lot can be done. I think these figures, actually these reports, offer these institutions the opportunity to do some introspection and then change course. Starting with the police, and the police, as Professor Aning said, is actually spot on. I think these are lagged figures. If you look at what Dampare has done so far, it's enormously respectful, and I think that yes, he's able to stand up against some of the bullies in the political parties. And so this will actually ginger them to actually do more. And I think it is right in the alley to turn the story around. I don't believe that in 2024, if the same poll was conducted, the police will be within those lowest limits. Not at all. So I think that it offers an opportunity for the police to say, okay, look, maybe this is another indicator. We have another opportunity to turn things around in this election. They should not carry favor of anybody. They should just do their work professionally as they always have done, especially with these by-elections, and then they'll just turn the corner. The courts obviously must be learning. I mean, look, there was a time I was in court, the Supreme Court, and I was wondering the way the judges were heckling some of the lawyers, and I asked, "Is that what happens here?" Someone said, a lawyer sat by me and said, "Oh, how come of course, High Court no more. They can even get and come and battle you." And I was like, "Wow, really?"
Wow.
I mean, sometimes you hear a judge make a pronouncement like, "Oh, you are not neutral." You go, and I'm asking myself, do these things happen in civilized places? No, not at all. Look, the courts must be seen to be the arbiter of the truth and justice, really. And if if I decide that if I have doubts about the court, even some of the rulings, some of the things I hear about, I get worried, right? And sometimes when you even challenge them, some of the rulings, maybe you are held before the court because of contempt. Civilized jurisdiction, these things don't happen. People criticize the courts fairly and squarely, and then we grow, right? So I think it's an opportunity for the court to also distinct itself, of course, because the way it appears now is as if the Attorney General is, the courts are at the beck and call of the Attorney General. He goes around, sways around, says all sorts of nonsense, and it's allowed. Look, we don't run a country like that. Look at what happened to Dome level. I think the Supreme Court took too long to rule on that matter. Those are urgent matters. So it makes it difficult now for when the Supreme Court now says that, I want additional judges because there are cases before us. There are some more important cases before us. I mean, some lawyers have told me, some of the cases they actually are talking about are piling up. Actually what? Requests for time, amendments, and all of that. They are not real cases, so they also need to deal with those matters to deal with the optics of being seriously taken. For the EC, it's an opportunity to again do an introspection and see they should come full circle. They should tell the stakeholders this time around. We want to have the elections with you. You see, they are acting on behalf of us. They are not overlords of us. So if you are going to organize an election for people and people are telling you that, look, the places you are asking us to come and register are too far off, just accommodate them and understand that these things should be done. Collation centers. Don't go and organize regional collation centers. Your own predecessor has told you that that was not, even if it was received wisdom, it was bad advice. Don't do things like that. Just take the people along. Of course, political parties will be stubborn. They'll be obviously sparring over for inches or whatever if you allow them. But you should be the one standing tall. That, look, this is the way I want to organize these elections. Come and let's do it together. You are not the one. In fact, I've said that organizing elections in this country is not difficult at all because also they have the money to do it, and the EC's budget typically sometimes are not approved properly. That's what we found out. So they can rig procurement rules and do all kinds of things, and they can get away with it. But this time, we are organizing an election, and this is a nail-bitingly close. It's going to be a nail-bitingly close elections, if what the polls are saying. And so you should be careful how you actually administer these elections. It will not be just like the other elections at all. And they should be seen to be communicating properly, communicate well, and not just be seen as being around.
Okay. Now let me bring in Professor Kwesi Aning here. So, Prof, you talked about it not looking pretty. Not looking good for the country. But let's look at the kind of risk facing us because of the Afrobarometer. What is ahead of us if these figures don't improve, bearing in mind that we're in an election year?
Well, they won't improve this year. I mean, they simply can't improve because some of the structural interventions that need to be implemented for qualitative improvements to show will take more than the 5 months that we have. And I think for all three institutions, there are real challenges and difficulties. I mean, the IGP has come through a very difficult period of a parliamentary inquiry where his own senior officers, now retired, sought to use dubious means to dent his image. He has to rebuild that image. He will need to re-strategize in terms of the headquarters administration, sending out signals to regional commanders and then it cascading down, planning for this extremely sensitive election. How does he put the election task force team together? How do they start to gather the risk assessments, identifying hotspots? The Electoral Commission, would need, even if it's superficial and rhetorical, change its attitude because its behavior. is what will make us smile on the 7th of January, or also create some really long-term problems for us. So what can we do and what do we need to do? I think as citizens and individuals, we have a responsibility through our own individual and collective actions to contribute to creating a better understanding and appreciation of who we are. So number one, we know that Act 999, the anti-vigilante law, has not worked very well. So they will rear their head very soon. So we need all parties, and I think the National Peace Council has started the process of getting all the parties to sign on to some kind of a peace accord promising, peaceful elections. That is more rhetoric than substance. We need the NCCE to start the process of getting the message out about the benefits of peaceful elections, bringing different stakeholders. But even more importantly, I think in 2020, there was some fast-track court for election-related violence. Now, there are two things that bother me as we head into this election, irrespective of the low scores for these three issues. That is the 8 people who died during election 2020 that we swept under the carpet as if those lives don't matter.
Yeah.
Those who were hurt, those who were sexually intimidated and abused, we cannot make believe that these things didn't matter. Emotional hurt takes a long time to heal, and when they burst, they can be dangerous. The second is the invasion of Parliament just before the election of the Speaker, who authorized the military and who also to enter and who authorized their withdrawal. Both parties have kept quiet, and that disturbs me. You see, because if no one was sanctioned for doing that, because that invasion of Parliament was considerably more serious than the violence at Ayawaso West Wagon, where we established the short commission of inquiry.
Yeah.
So if an action that threatened the survival of the seat of democracy itself has been swept away, then we need to be careful.
Prof, talking about...
Yes, please go on.
Yes, talking about being careful. Now, many of the literature has said that, the effect of mistrust in public institutions is conflict. Does it look like we're getting there?
Well, I think it ebbs and flows. So I've heard people talking about preventing Ghana getting into a Kenya-style situation. And my argument is that Ayawaso West Wagon, the murder of the 8 people, the invasion of Parliament, were our Kenya moments that we have overlooked and we haven't learned anything from. So that was the flowing. It has ebbed and flowed at a much lower level. But the campaign is now going to start in earnest because all the key officials have been nominated and voted for. So we have this cauldron in which in the next 5 months or so, the travels around this country, top speed with sirens, so lots of accidents, people being knocked down, the resurgence of vigilantes, the usage of arms, tearing of posters, all thrown together in 5 months space. That normally thought we do the elections in like 8-9 months will heighten the tensions and the misunderstandings and the possibility for violence. So I think the police service and the election security team have a job on their hands. We will do the assessments. We will do both the risk assessments and analysis, and then draw whatever conclusions need to be drawn. But I can tell you, we are not sitting pretty at all.
And let no one use this caution or cautionary tales by twisting it and saying, it is the terrorists from outside who are doing it. No. Terrorists from the outside can only misbehave domestically if the domestic structural conditions for violence have already been laid. And I think we are laying it quite nicely.
Wow, that's something to think about, something to worry about, to be honest. I want to say a big thank you to both of you, Frank and Cudjoe, founder and president of Imani Center for Policy and Education, and Professor Kwesi Aning, security consultant, for the insights into this Afrobarometer report. We appreciate your time with us this morning. Look, it's disquieting, I won't lie, especially when you listen to Professor Kwesi Aning stacking up all the variables, to demonstrate what it could actually result in a year like this. Franklin Cudjoe minces no words when he talks about how disappointing it is that, especially the courts have fallen so low in the estimation of the people, when ultimately, if push comes to shove, they will be the last word on who won the election.
I want to take this out of an election year. One of the reasons why our democracy is not working is that the institutions, we do not believe that on an ordinary day, without anybody's interference, they will do the right thing. That is a fundamental problem. You ask ordinary people on the streets about their experience, perceived sometimes what the people have told them or what they suspect has happened. Our system is not delivering the kind of customer service, or even take our customer, because we say we are part of it, service that is supposed to deliver. And we excuse ourselves. First, we say we are a third world country. Two, we say all systems are not perfect. So we don't expect perfection of human beings. Yet people elsewhere do it a bit appreciably, far better than we do. Then we also give ourselves all of these familiar connections and excuses we give ourselves. So if people do not think that between me and Winston, when we have a legitimate issue that ought to be resolved by a court of this country, and without inducement, without any influence, without any power on any of our sides, I will not get justice. I will not be treated fairly. That fundamentally affects our conception of whether the state is working for some, all, or we should even contribute to it. It affects whether or not I think I should be part of those paying taxes or finding my way through, or when there is a matter before any court, I think they'll do the right thing. I hope you get my point. So no matter what happens in every single environment, if legitimate institutions of state cannot guarantee to the people that no matter who you are, we will grant you what is required, you'll be treated fairly, you'll be treated responsibly, merely because somebody has the backing, or even sometimes a perceived backing. Because you see, the people might not have even influenced. Sometimes the people who go to say that the president says this, or this man says that, or you should do this and do it this way because this is what the president wants, I am convinced most of the time they might not have even spoken to anybody. But there's an existing tradition that some people can get their way. And it affects most of our dealings. It affects whether or not I feel, given a good day, the gentleman who is sitting at the helm of affairs when it comes to our elections will do the right thing. Are they fixing dates merely because it's right? Are they reducing number of days? Are they reducing this? Are they choosing options? We do the scrutiny because we do not trust our people to do what is right without anybody asking them to do so. And it is something we should fundamentally fix. Or else this entire project of democracy will still remain a Trojan horse one, a pretentious one. Works for some at certain times, then it doesn't work for anybody. So it can work for you as an NPP person today. Then when power changes hands, the next people would also have it working for them. Then you'll be there complaining. Then there's a common denominator. Most of the people who are not predominantly under the influence of NPP and NDC really would all be the ones who are always losing out, unless they also have money to influence a system to work for them. But the entire idea of having a system like this in place is so that you and I can be treated fairly, not because we are connected, not because we are special, not because we have done something to somebody that requires some form of payment. And that, to me, is the view. Our work, we take feedback. You can be sacked because of feedback.
Yeah.
These institutions, do they equally think about the feedback we give them? Or because they think they have some protection, they are okay to go? Nobody is saying that when an errant partisan view is being shared about you should take it serious. But this is not a view of partisan people alone. It's a general view of people. At least it's across time. So it's not just a year. So that I can't say that, oh, it's an NPP conversation or an NDC conversation. There is a problem with even the numbers in our very best. You see, choose other African countries. Some of the things that we pretend that we are doing better than. Some of the people, look at similar data from those countries. Then you have to humble yourself and see that there's something fundamentally wrong, which ought to be fixed.
It doesn't help, does it, Winston, that we have this weird, slimy film of politics separating what appears to be two systems in this country, right? So, especially with the courts and the police. So it's almost as if there's political law and then there's law for the rest of us. Certain things don't even rise to the level of crime if the perpetrator is a politician or associated with a politician. All of these things must surely erode at the trust that we are supposed to have in these institutions. And Professor Kwesi gave two examples, right? He talks about the takeover of Parliament by the military, sanctioned by the Speaker. No one has looked into that. No one has even raised the fundamental constitutional, I don't even know what the word is, trauma that was. Then you have 8 people dying in an election. Not a tweet from our president who won that election. I mean, is it a surprise that we've arrived at this point where the average person, like Raymond says, doesn't trust that without intervention, the right thing will ever be done?
So, when we're getting into the 7th of January, we've had the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources here say that he spoke to his brother, Dominic Nitiwul, to actually try and restore some sanity at the time, and that's my word. That led to the military coming in. At the time, had the clerk of parliament in the seat. The speaker himself was waiting to be elected. But this is it for me.
Oh yes, thanks for that correction. Yeah.
You've seen Professor Ramona Tuguba, right, and do Ghana's version of ideological leanings of judges. I say Ghana's version of ideological leanings, because many of us don't have ideologies in this part of our world. So he's looked at
partisan leaning.
Why the laughter?
I mean,
I have chosen my words nicely. Ghana's version of ideological leanings.
I get you anyway.
And he's shown, for instance, how judges appointed within a particular time tend to vote on certain cases.
Yeah.
But that should give us an idea, even when it comes to paneling, for instance. But you see, again, we play politics with everything. And sometimes, instead of focusing on it and saying, hold on a minute, so let's look at all the cases. And that was actually a time for us to look at the cases and say that, okay, are there some people who probably could be seen as neutrals who then can determine cases? We didn't get there, okay? And so we let it go. And I'm sure for many people, if they go and look at election petition of 2013, they probably will learn a thing or two. And if they look at election petition of 2020, let's be very honest here. In election petition 2013, that case was not going to lead to a change in the presidency. If that was bad in 2013, 2020 was worse. Let nobody. I mean, 2013 was a lot of technicalities here and there. 2020 2021 was more technicalities because, you didn't say that you had won. You said, based on what you announced, and you saw Justice Apau's question doing that. So let's put that one aside. But what that actually did was the political elite using that also to cover up the inefficiencies in an election and putting the blame on the judiciary. And unfortunately, the judiciary also played in a way that in that particular case, look, the political elite threw it on the judiciary. But subsequently, when you have the Minister of National Security saying if all the cases go in favor of us, people will raise concerns. Then you let the person say, oh, Semekaye. And you see, one of the things we say, for all those who have studied propaganda here is not the peddling of falsehood. It's organized scheme in propagating, in actually championing a cause. Will tell you that do not say anything new. You should always remind the people of the things they know in the past. This is what I'm driving at. If today there's no trust in the Ghana Police Service, there's no trust in the court, no trust in the Electoral Commission. If we do not act now, at the time of election, if I were contesting and I was losing, I would say, I don't trust the Electoral Commission. I don't trust the police to do the right thing. So let's put the law into our own hands and let's get on the street and start a protest. Let us fight because we do not trust these people to do the right thing. Certainly that is not what we want to get to. But this is the most important point. Professor Aning talks about the fact that, there must always be fertile grounds. Okay? In the discussion and the literature about insurgency, there's always the talk about a sense of insurgency. There must always be an underlying situation that would convince whoever that you can do this. It's the only reason why Fidel Castro was successful and Che Guevara was unsuccessful in Bolivia. Okay? Because in Fidel Castro's case, there were grounds for that in Cuba. So when he started, he was successful. When Che Guevara went to other countries where there were no grounds and he thought he could replicate the same system, he failed. My point is that a lot of the research is just a way of telling you what to do and what is ahead of you. Let us not take this and pretend to be another research. Today, in fact, the minister in charge of national security should be engaging the Electoral Commission, should be a chairperson of the Electoral Commission, should be engaging the IGP, and should be engaging the Chief Justice on ways and the Judicial Council on how they can bring back confidence within these institutions. We must not go to sleep. Because look, if I have a problem, I would go to the court. But the moment I lose trust in the court, I will not go to the court. If I don't go to the court, what am I going to do? If it is gun that I have, I will finish you. I take the law into my own hands. But under no circumstance must anybody take the law into his own hands. Because I could be wrong. Okay? I could be wrong. So for me, I would end on this note. All over the world, research has been shown to shape our basic existence. Okay? All the things we know about our health today were born out of research. And the research is telling us that people have lost confidence. Let us not say, they are anti-government people. No. They are Ghanaians. And the time to have acted was yesterday.
5 months to the election. Well, let's certainly hope that at least the institutions are listening to this and that their conscience will be pricked to do whatever it takes to regain some ground in terms of people's faith in them, because continuing business as usual is not an option. It's not an option, not in a year like this. The election is too close to call. All of them are going to be relied on to play their role, and we need them to up their games.